I gotta say, I find myself rooting for the new CEO of Twitter, unironically, because he has proven me right. You see, 2 or 3 years ago, I talked about how difficult it is for social media to censor people because they need to strike a balance in order to maintain the illusion that they are the public square. Because clearly they are not. They want you to believe that when you go on Twitter or Facebook, you're talking to the average Joe. What people are saying on Twitter and Facebook is what people are actually saying in society. And it's in no way manipulated. It's in no way what the corporation, Twitter or Facebook, wants you to see. And in order to achieve that, they have to be very careful with their censorship. But recently, Twitter has banned multiple high-ranked figures in quick succession. So you have Major Troller Green, which got banned. And a lot of people started asking the question, it's like, okay, but has any Democrat been banned off the Twitter up until now? Or is it that Democrats are the only politicians on planet Earth in the history of mankind that never lie? They never spread misinformation. They never say anything that's factually inaccurate. So they're probably like the only politicians that are completely honest, which is why they don't get banned. Or is it that Twitter is a little bit partisan? And the answer is that Twitter is partisan, but believe it or not, most people aren't aware of this. Twitter is the new Tumblr now. And if you want to fact check me on this, feel free to just go in a taxi or talk to a plumber or any working class lad and ask him something controversial, like does he think trans women are women? And then put his reply on the Twitter and see if you get banned. The reason you get banned is because the conversation on social media doesn't reflect the conversation in actual society, which is why most politicians and journalists in Britain went Pikachu face when the conservatives won in a landslide. Because what's going on Twitter is different from society, and I'm pretty sure everyone who watches my channel knows this. But in order to maintain this illusion, they have to be very careful with how they ban people. Usually, they will ban a high-profile target and cool down for a little bit. But now they keep banning and banning and banning and banning, and what this causes is it makes people feel afraid of using the platform. So you get people like Joe Rogan viewing that in the way things are going, even him, and let's be honest, Joe Rogan is the normie. Like Joe Rogan is the most popular podcast on the internet because he's kind of like the average dude that's trying to understand things and asks questions. And because of that, by Twitter banning people, he's like, okay, well, they're going to come for me next. So it doesn't make sense for me to remain on this platform. I don't see a future. And even if I have a future, why do I want to be stressed out constantly that my business might be ruined by them banning me? Because once you get banned from the Twitter, especially if you're a public person, then the journalists come in and they use your Twitter banning as if it's some sort of rap sheet. Like when they talk about the controversial figure, like, I don't know, Alex Jones, they will say, oh, Alex Jones who has been banned from this and this and that. As if like if a corporation bans you, it's kind of like having a criminal record. Like they did that with Carl Benjamin when he was running for the UK elections. It was like Carl Benjamin who has been banned from Twitter and he has been deplatformed from Patreon. As if, like these are powerful words of accusations that private companies can bring on a citizen. So in order to avoid this, most people are going to now look for alternatives. And the only way it can happen is if people like Joe Rogan, if people like Tim Pool, if big commentators with millions of subscribers are just going to start moving. That's how Parler actually became famous, because you had a lot of these famous people, a lot of these entertainers, and a lot of these talking heads move over to another platform. And for the average user, if he sees one person moving, they're probably not going to transition. But when he sees 4 or 5 content creators moving, then they move to the other platform as well. And that's how you got the Parler phenomenon. It's just more and more people moving. So this is why I like the new CEO on Twitter, because he really doesn't understand this. So he is banning people as often as possible, which is causing people to just move away. I mean, the conversation wants to happen. The market demands the conversation. I know these people don't like the fact that people are talking and it's a danger to their democracy and safety by people just communicating things that are legal and you don't get in prison for talking about them. But it is what it is, like the market will find a way. And just because they can't talk on Twitter, if the conversation really needs to happen, it's going to happen on other platforms where they can't censor. And up until now, they would just ban one person in order to get all the others to fall in line, or they'll ban two people. But with Twitter, I think it's like 3 or 4 high-profile individuals banned within the course of a month. So yeah, I mean, they're just going to transition to different platforms, and what you gonna do about it? Maybe they're going to try to take down the platforms, but at this point, it's kind of difficult. It's very difficult to do. So yeah, I'm big heart, the new CEO of Twitter. Mucho love, because he deserves it. I mean, he definitely doesn't understand what's going on, and he keeps doing it. And like all this thing, like I kept talking about how progressives like really try to protect people from the misinformation, right? So especially with the Rona, it's like, oh well, there's a lot of misinformation, so we need to protect people. We need to treat people like children. And the only way they can be protected from the misinformation is if they don't hear it. Because if someone hears the misinformation, they're going to automatically believe it. So we need to treat them like children. We need to step in. We need to bring our fact checkers to make sure that... Okay, when you do that, you're making people not trust you. Because I have looked really hard for this mythical misinformation. Unironically, I spent days on the internet searching for the fabled misinformation. I couldn't find it. So I asked people, like, why do you not go with the grain? Why do you not do what the experts tell you? And a lot of these people answered me, I don't trust them because censorship. Like, if they're censoring, there must be some merit to what they're censoring. And I'm pretty sure, like, this chain of thought is keeping a lot of progressives awake at night. They really disagree with this way of thinking. Like, what do you mean? But think about it. It's kind of like the forbidden apple in the Garden of Eden. I mean, people from thousands of years ago wrote that story, and they realized that when you take something away, when you add mysticism to something, you will gravitate naturally towards that forbidden thing. So like you can eat from every tree in the garden, but it's that one tree that you can't eat from, and everyone goes to that tree. Why? Because they're not allowed. It's kind of like creating heretical literature. Like everyone wants to read the heretical literature because they're curious. Why is it heretical? What is bothering people so much? Like, be honest, if you had a library in your house and someone said you're not allowed to read this book, well, that's the book you're going to want to read the most, isn't it? Just because you're not allowed to read it. Like that book becomes so enticing all of a sudden. Even if it's the most boring book on earth. But, like progressives just don't want to understand this. They think that if they just ban people that speak against the grain. I mean, look at the consensus paradox. The consensus paradox tell you that when literally everyone is agreeing with an issue, chances are that issue is false. It's kind of like flipping a coin 100 times and always landing on heads. It means that the coin is rigged. It doesn't mean that, well, he's a good flipper and he also always manages to call it. No. Like, the probability of everyone agreeing with the issue is so low that when you have that consensus, it means that something is rotten. And people understand this instinctively. They kind of get it at a deeper sense. It's like, there is no way that literally every single human on earth agrees with what you're saying. I mean, take a room of 100 people, ask them a controversial question, you're going to have some people that disagree with you, if they're being honest. If not, it's the consensus paradox, which means that they are being constrained to think this way. So when you say even the word the scientific consensus, it's just the consensus paradox. There shouldn't be a consensus. But anyway, it is what it is. So I'm really happy with the new CEO. Please ban more people off Twitter. Ban them all. I'm really glad you're doing this. Hopefully Twitter is going to become the new Tumblr, where it's going to get such a rotten name that just by being there, by being on the platform, people are going to look at you suspiciously. Like, why are you there? And by the way, like, a lot of people say just don't use Twitter. And I think these people don't really get what's going on. It's not the fact that you use Twitter that's the problem. That's not even how Twitter makes their money. The main problem is that you have the blue check marks. And the blue check marks are members of various publications. And they keep radicalizing themselves on Twitter. They're setting narratives in the open, like you can see them doing it. They're setting narratives, they radicalize each other more and more and more. And then they take that radicalism and they put it on their public website, whether it's the BBC, the Guardian, CNN, or whatever. And that is the issue. It's not the fact that people stay on Twitter. Because at the end of the day, Twitter isn't making much money because I'm staying on that platform. But it is what it is. And by the way, like, Twitter isn't even good for what I want to use it anymore. Like, I used to use it in order for people to get in touch with my videos. But apparently the new algorithm, if you put a link to a video on the site, it gets suppressed because Twitter doesn't want you to go offside. They don't want you to click on something else. So whenever I upload a tweet with my video, it gets like 2 or 3 retweets. But if I say something really dumb, it can get 100, 200 retweets. Why? Because the algorithm is manipulated. So, you know, like the more they do this, the more I feel like not using their platform and branching out. I'll try making a Getter account or whatever to follow Joe Rogan there. And hopefully Getter is going to become the new Parler. Because, you know, I miss Parler. Like, you go on Twitter. And they were talking about the Holocaust and Nazis. And like, when do these conversations even happen in real life? Fuck is wrong with these people? And then you go on Parler and you see Kevin Sorbo going, here's 10 reasons why golf is better than sex. And I'm like, you know what? Like, this is actually a conversation that I could see myself having with some friends and Father O'Malley over a pint of beer. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.